GMTs, more GMTs, a moon phase, and a surprising amount of perpetual calendars. It's episode 72 of A Week in Watches, a semi-weekly look back at news, stories, releases, and more from the watch industry. I'm Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn & Wound, and I'll be your host today. It's time for part 2 of our A Year in Watches special. This week, focusing on independent brands. Once again, there was far too much to cover in a reasonable amount of time, so here are just a few highlights. If I missed anything that stood out to you in 2023, let us know in the comments. I mean, I know I did, so there should be plenty to say. This week's episode is sponsored by the Wind-Up Watch Shop, which recently added a pre-order for the new Leico Bremerhaven and Cuxhaven 39. Two elegant German-made watches based on 1940s naval pocket watches. Priced at $1,560, these are stylish watches to kick off the year. Head to windupwatchshop.com to check those out and more. Like and subscribe when you have a chance. Thanks in advance. Now let's get on with the show. Nodus makes a very noticeable diver. See what I did there? California's Nodus had several launches last year, including affordable sector dial GMTs, a line of smaller, dressier pieces with ceramic bezels, and my personal favorite of the year, a beastly high-spec diver simply called Sector Deep. A 500-meter diver, it measured 42 millimeters at the bezel, but 38 at the case with a 47 millimeter lug-to-lug length and a thickness of 13.7, which were very nice proportions considering the depth rating. They also offered it as a destro model out of the gate. The dial was pure business with massive applied lume markers for high visibility, hash marks on a raised chapter ring, and a date at 6. Really no distractions. Large hour and minute hands with very distinct shapes and tons of lume, once again guaranteed no confusion. The sector element was reserved for the bezel, which featured a clever split construction with a 12-hour index on a dark gray surface and a 60-minute index on a black surface with all numerals filled with BGW9 lume. Basically, it was something of a mix between a Tudor Pelagos and a Sin U50, but non-homage to either, coming together to have its own look and feel. Inside was the venerable Seiko NH35, which, while a bit underwhelming, helped to keep the price a very reasonable $599. Oh, and that included a bracelet, so really a very killer value. LORIER's Hydra grows a third head. While on the topic of impressive yet affordable watches, LORIER unveiled their tooliest version of their Hydra line yet. The Hydra has perhaps seen more dramatic changes in its three forms than any other watch from LORIER, starting as essentially a variation on their Neptune diver with a non-numerical bezel and a more graphic dial, the idea being that the bezel could be used however one wanted. From there, it became a dual-crown sports watch with a rotating internal 12-hour bezel, a more specifically travel-focused design. It stood out in their collection. We liked it so much, we made a limited edition with it. For version 3, they've taken the Hydra into toolier territory, growing it in size and adding a flyer GMT complication. Now measuring 41 millimeters up from 39, it's their biggest watch yet, but still features a modest lug-to-lug of 46 millimeters. An external bezel with a vintage-styled diver insert surrounds a bold 24-hour index around the inside of the dial. From there, a more standard diver layout of lume plots is found. Inside is the still relatively new Miyota 9075 Flyer GMT Automatic, which is always great to see in use. Combined with one of their best-in-class bracelets, the Hydra 3 offered a very compelling package at $599. Arin moves GMTs in-house. The UK-based young startup Arin announced their second watch this year, which featured something quite uncommon, an in-house developed complication. Called the Alterum, it shared some DNA with the brand's first watch, an aggressive and modern all-titanium integrated sports watch called the Instrumentum. The Alterum kept their unique 40mm wide from 3 to 9, but 38mm long from 6 to 12 titanium case shape. However, they ditched the bezel for a cleaner look and went for a pad-printed dial rather than applied markers. One look at the dial will quickly let you know that inside is no normal movement, as there are 4 hands at center, a pointer date at 6, and round apertures on either side of the dial. A bespoke module based on the Miyota 9015 called the ARC 9015 DT, it was brand founder Kenneth Lamb's vision of a GMT, and it doesn't work quite like others. When setting the time forward, all of the 4 hands move together, but when setting backward, the 24-hour hand moves independently. The dots on either side represent AM and PM for both the 24-hour and 12-hour hands, which is very cool. The pointer date at 6 is self-explanatory, except that it is set via the pusher at 4. A cool concept that is even cooler when you think about the fact that it was developed by a micro brand for their second watch. No one else has exactly anything like that, and the watch costs a fairly reasonable $745. I don't know about you, but the era of small indies developing their own modules is very exciting to me. FARER went to the moon. More from the UK, more complications. Let's go. FARER's focus in 2023 was in watches with complications, and while they are no strangers to GMTs, chronographs, and even world timers, this year marked their first foray into moon phases. Aptly titled the Moonphase Collection, not exciting but not misleading either, the watches utilize the brand's elegant 38.5mm cushion case, altered to have a beautiful texture along its sides. The spotlight, however, is on the dials, as is typically the case for FARER given their tasteful use of color and generally keen design sensibilities. Available in 3 styles, what unites the watches is a large central moonphase aperture with a beautiful and pleasantly different approach to the moonphase disc itself. Almost appearing like watercolor paintings, the moons are represented in soft tones that glow in the dark over atypical blue backgrounds. The result is elegant and whimsical, particularly on the aqua-dialed Burbridge model with its pink lunar surface. Powered by a hand-wound Sellita SW288, these watches come in at $1,695. Curious, what do you think about moon phases? Are they cool or are they pointless? Christopher Ward gets integrated. One more round in the UK. Christopher Ward had a great year of releases to follow up the game-changing C1 Belcanto from 2022. They kicked it off with a fantastic collaboration with fellow Brits, FARER, in the form of a jump hour watch that was limited to only 50 pieces and available only to members of the Alliance of British Watch and Clockmakers. But the focus of 2023 for Christopher Ward was their, well, not first, but first in a long time, integrated bracelet sports watch called the 12. Actually, it's not just a watch, but rather a quickly growing family that already spans over 20 models. Available in steel and titanium in both 36 and 40 millimeters and a rainbow of dial colors, their approach to the Genta-inspired genre featured fantastic case finishing, 12-sided bezels, and slim profiles combined with heavily textured dials and applied markers. For those looking for something a touch fancier, they also made a few with solid gold bezels. Ranging in price from $995 to $2,055, they attempted to make a version for everyone, and were pretty successful with it, as the 12 was met with excitement from the brand's rapidly growing customer base. Will 2024 see more integrated sports watches? How are you feeling about this trend? Is it time for us to move on? Enough with the UK, on to France. Both Baltic and Furlan-Marie had solid years in 2023. Baltic's most notable launch was the Hermetique Field Watch line. The brand's first field series, they took a pleasantly different approach to the concept. The first round, called the Tourer, features a 37mm case with a recessed crown and striking dial design with bold molded loom markers. Priced at about $600, it was very nice to see Baltic pursue something with a new language. Furlan-Marie entered into the mechanical space first with a trio of teardrop-lugged 3-hand sector dials. Technically, they had a limited edition 2022 that was their real first mechanical, but these were not limited, so I'll count them as first. Measuring 37.5mm and coming in silver, salmon, and black, they were powered by the 68-hour Le Jouperet G100 automatic caliber and priced at 1,250 Swiss francs or about 1450 USD. Who doesn't like a nice sector dial? At the end of the year, Furlan-Marie launched their first mechanical chronographs in the form of a triple collab with Revolution and Oro Montanare. These classically styled chronos measured 38mm in diameter and featured the AMT 5100 caliber, which is hand-wound and features both flyback functionality and a column whip. Priced at 2,750 francs or about $3,200, these represented a clear move upmarket for the young brand. But the most impressive announcements from both brands were around the postponed Only Watch auction. Both brands surprised with their own takes on perpetual calendars, both with bespoke modules. The watch by Baltic, or rather Baltic Experiments, which is their new higher-end sub-brand, utilized a Vaucher microrotor as its base movement, resulting in a very thin overall height. Otherwise, the watch featured a fairly classic calendar layout, save the pointer date at center, and was rendered in an intense purple hue. Furlan-Marie's perpetual calendar, which I feel like I bring up way too often on A Week in Watches, was of the very rare secular variety, adjusting for the once every 4 centuries skipping of the leap year. A novel take on the complication, it also features the leap indicator on the back of a centrally mounted month pointer. Just wild. It's pretty incredible that both of these brands have pulled off such a high level of development and execution. Hopefully, they will keep it up in 2024. One more entry from France. Space One made a bold debut with an exotic-looking jump hour. A project by Guillaume Ledet of Nevada Grenchen, Vulcain, and others, and Théo Offray, a high-end independent, the new brand seeks to bring some futuristic styling and interesting complications into more affordable space. Their first watch was a wrist-mounted spaceship made of titanium, blued titanium, steel, or carbon fiber, and featured a jump hour module designed in-house by Offray for use with the Soprod P024 caliber. Priced at around $2,000 USD, these represented a unique value, if in a very odd-looking package. LORIER gets spooky with Constantine Shaken. In another example of something typically high-end and unobtainable being made at least semi-accessible, Louard, the Swiss-based brand known for regulators and cool collaborations, teamed up with Constantine Shaken, the Russian watchmaker who mixes insanely genius mechanics with oddly irreverent designs, for a, well, monstrous new watch. A duo of limited editions launched at different times of the year. The Time Eater, as it was aptly titled, featured a riff on Shaken's famous wristmonds concept, utilizing eyes as hands to create watch faces that are literally faces. For the Louard regulator version, the hour hand became the eyeball, the seconds hand's a mouth, and the minute hand an actual hand that I believe is flipping you the bird. The Time Eater was available in 39 and 42 millimeters. The first version featured a textured white dial with colorized chapter rings. The second version featured black on gray dials and bloodshot eyes for a decidedly more sinister set of monsters. Priced at 4,000 Swiss francs or about $4,500, these monsters are now sadly extinct as all sold out, though you can sign up for a waitlist for some reason. One last stop in the US. While there are dozens, if not hundreds, of other releases and watches worth going over, I have to get on with my life. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Chen Shapiro resurgence, also known as the first US-made mechanical watch since 1969. Asterisk here, and that's by the FTC's inane standards. A bit of context here. In 2015, the FTC ruled that for a watch to be considered made in America, i.e. says made in America or something similar on a dial or uses that in marketing materials, the watch has to be, quote, all or virtually all made in the United States, setting the highest standard in the world for an origin statement. This was in reaction to brands using confusing language that made it seem like they were made here when perhaps they were only assembled from imported parts. While setting a standard is good, logical, and can create goals for brands, setting one that is unrealistic and doesn't reflect the way an industry works is frustrating. It's a cottage industry where expertise is shared among many suppliers. Even many big Swiss brands that make watches in-house got to that point by buying smaller companies. If anything, by setting such a high bar, they have discouraged the pursuit of making watches in America on scale, as dials, hands, cases, even movement components on their own wouldn't make a watch American-made. But in 2023, Chen Shapiro proved it was doable, but in the very high-end, bespoke, independent kind of a way, i.e. they're making the whole thing themselves, which is absolutely awesome, American or not. As for the watch, the Resurgence, it's made entirely in Shapiro's California workshop. It's an ornate but tasteful neoclassical timepiece in the vein of Roger Smith, Vuitton, and etc. It features a multi-layer rose engine-turned guilloche dial, a gorgeous 38mm case with an engine-turned mid-case, and of course, their in-house movement, which is available with 3 different bridge designs. Priced at $70,000 in steel or zirconium and up to $85,000 for solid gold, the Resurgence is a true high-end independent American-made watch. My rant before is not to take anything away from Shapiro's achievements, as they are remarkable and stunningly beautiful. Rather, only to suggest that making an American-made watch should reflect the realities of the industry and be a goal more could achieve. Where do you stand on the standards for an American-made watch? And what do you think of the Resurgence? And with that, let's start 2024. I'm so over 2023. If in 2024 all the industry does is build on the year before, we're already due for an exceptional year of watchmaking. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to check out warningwound.com daily for more great watch content. See you soon.